Jesus fucking. 43 years of trying to write intelligent lyrics, and that's all you remember.
Welcome to the Riff Crew. I'm your host, Steve Mitchell, back for another big episode here on the Riff Crew. And we're back in the realm and back in the territory of the unknown with the great explorer, Skull. How you doing, mate?
Good, man. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen in Cyberland. As you know, this is Skull, broadcasting from the past, present, and future in the Chamber of the Cosmos. Here with my good friend Steve Oz from Ozland. I'm in on again, off again DC bomb rock band Black Manta. Been in the scene for over 35 years. I also worked at the Smithsonian for 20 years, and so I've incorporated my love and passion for history with my love and passion for music. So, as usual, really excited to be here. And we have a special guest with us here today, Tommy Carr, my friend and drummer extraordinaire from many bands in the DC area, including Black Market Baby and Black Manta. And it's great to have you here with us, man.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Right on. And we were just chatting a little bit before we got started here, and I have a million questions to ask you, and you've been doing this for a long time, so I was thinking that we could have kind of an ongoing segment that I was kind of playing with some ideas with the names, and I came up with the name, so I wanted to run it by you real quick, and let me know what you think. I was thinking about, how about this? Raw Power, the DC underground music scene through the eyes of Tommy Carr.
Dude, we're channeling, man.
That's right, exactly. It's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, like I was saying, you know, some people out there might be familiar with Black Market Baby or Black Manta. You've been doing this for almost 50 years. You've been in the scene for 50 years. And just thought it would be a great time to just kind of talk about your, you know, your involvement in the music scene and how you got started. I mean, if you want, I mean, this is just completely open, man. This is your show now. So you can just, however, no holds barred. You can just start, you know. So if you want, I mean, just to get the audience out there, just kind of introduce yourself a little bit. And then explain how you kind of got started in the scene.
Well, it's interesting that you picked that one album in particular, Raw Power, because we've been talking about this for some time, and it's given me a chance to reflect a little bit about just my journey. There you go.
Right on.
Hold on.
There you go.
Mick
Awesome.
Rock. Mick Rock, he was there.
Right on.
God bless him. God bless him, man, for capturing that for the eternity. But yeah, we were talking about this, and I was trying to think about how do you approach something like this, because Black Market Baby gets a lot of attention, which I appreciate that, and it's been there's the ups and downs, as is always. But that's only like one little sliver, really, of my experience. And I was trying to think like what were like sort of the flashpoints in my life, growing up from when I was a kid. And one of them was in 1973 when I went grocery shopping with my mom down at Rockville. It was called a Super Giant. It's right there at Montrose Road at 355. It's still a giant, still there. But this was called a Super Giant. So they had grocery stores, but they also had a whole department store section, kind of like Target is. They do like the dual thing. And they had the audio section. As soon as you walk in the door, that's where this is back in the 70s when you had 12-inch vinyl, all the record bins are like right there, boom, boom, boom. And in row A, seat one was Raw Power, just a stack of them. I guess it just came into the store. And I walked into the store, and that was the first thing that I saw when I walked in that store. And I immediately saw that image, and I went like a beeline. What is this? Just that one photograph just completely, it grabbed every bit. I mean, it was just like, it really got me. And I'm looking at this thing, flipping over, and it's like, these guys are pushing it. They're doing something that in 73 you have to think of that. That's when, where do you want to start? Zeppelin, ELP, Deep Purple, was AOR, everything was huge, huge, huge. And here's this really like almost, you look at this, it's like I'm just looking at a complete discarding of that whole kind of way of approaching music. And it just that I took it home, and then I heard it. And when I heard that mix, it was like nothing else I ever heard. And Search and Destroy just grabbed me. It just, I wore that record out like, I mean, my goodness, it's like, I know that thing inside out, upside down, backwards, every single riff, every single little nuance that James and Iggy are doing off each other. And, and that really kind of set my attitude, because I was already into the Dolls at that time. I was really heavy into the Dolls. I was really heavy into T-Rex, like T-Rex, Bowie, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper is
Right here.
yeah, that's the album, Jeepster, man. I mean, that's that album, man, Jeepster and like Metal Guru and all that stuff.
Right.
Um, it
I
just
kind of read
seemed,
your mind. I kind of read your mind a little bit and figured you might be talking about some of these albums, so I pulled them
yeah.
out.
Well, the thing is, see, this is where the age restrictions start to play in, because that came out in 71 early. They were putting out 2 albums a year, so that was early 71. Killer came out in late 71, and they played Alexandria Roller Rink. And my two older brothers were going to that concert. And they're going, "Hey, Tommy, you want to go to the show? We're going." And I was like, "Well, what's that? What's going on? What's the band? Whatever." They're called Alice Cooper. And I'm like going, "Alice what?" And I'm like, why would I go to that? I would go to that, So I missed it. Going to see the Coop in on the Killer tour, but they brought home the tour book. Okay. And that thing just blew my mind. It blew my mind. And there was something about the nexus of the image, theatrics, that whole, can take you to another place just by looking at it. Plus the musicality behind it, the songwriting. They were genius songwriters. The way they constructed, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the studio with those guys. The way they pieced all the guitar parts together, and Neil's overdubbing his drums. And so I was already really locked in with that whole scene, totally underground. I love the song Brandy. Looking Glass came on right around the same time. I remember that song coming on the radio. It was such a beautiful song, man. I loved listening to it. The Carpenters, they just sounded good.
Right.
I was just really into a lot of different types of music, but this one genre really got me, and it kind of set me on this path for that I'm still on today. I mean, I've never been one to want to, seek out, success in the terms of, record deals and sales and such. There was an interview that I read with Richie Blackmore, and they were very successful. And he was asked, how do you define success? And he goes, well, it depends how you put it. If success means to be fashionable, then yeah, I guess we are. But if success means to be, developing your art, continuing to strive to be better, be a better songwriter, a better performer, in that regard, he goes, yes, I'm a tremendous success. So I've always chosen that path. I never really went for, the image thing, or, even though now later on, you learn things, and it's image is everything. You take a good picture, and put out a good video, that's going to open a lot of doors without hearing a lick. And case in point, there was a band open for Iggy down at the 930 Club. They're from LA. They looked great, but they sounded horrible. And it was like they had all the moves down, but their songs are so banal. It was like, God, where have I heard that riff a gazillion times? And I knew exactly where the songs were going. It's like, whereas with the Stooges, you didn't know where the hell they were going. You look at Raw Power. They put that together, in a very short amount of time, and they only played, I think, one show in England, at King's Cross, because of contractual obligations. Tony DeFries was all tied up with Main Man pushing Bowie.
Yeah.
So Bowie was it. So they're all the energy is in there. And here's the Stooges. They're over here. They're going to try to make Iggy like the next Mark Bolan or the next David Bowie, And meanwhile, they're just sitting there stewing in this little sweaty ass rehearsal room, banging out more songs. So by the time they did the one show at the King's Cross, the set, which would be the holy grail of audio or visual, which I don't think exists, but the set apparently had nothing that was on the Raw Power record. which was what the record was at the time. And you would think a band would be pushing the record, but no, they're just in there doing this. They're being the Stooges, They're writing like "Wet My Bed" and shit, or Rubberland, you know.
Well,
So
so I just wanted to ask you, so like when you were with your mom and dad out and when Raw Power spoke to you the way it spoke to you, so you were kind of already on that path to begin with. It was already speaking to you because you had already been introduced to Alice Cooper and T-Rex. So when you saw that, it was just like it was just one more level up, essentially.
well, yeah, it was to the next extreme.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was right. It was right at that same time when Kiss came out.
Hmm.
And, I'm a Kiss freak. When it comes to those first like handful of albums up through like the second live album, um, that stuff. I appreciate the later works even more now than I did then. I was such a diehard like purist on that first record, those first like three records, and then the first live album. That anything that strayed from that is like, nah, no, no, I don't want to hear it. Like when I heard Beth, it was like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? You
Right.
know? But it was the next rung from climbing that ladder, the next rung going from glam to like Iggy to Kiss.
Well, yeah, and
And
you were seeing all this happen in real time. I mean, you didn't realize it, and you and a whole generation of kids didn't realize it, but you were watching the emergence and the birth of the punk movement, essentially. You were seeing it happen in real time.
yeah, at the same time, digging thick as a brick or
Right.
or brain salads
One 40-minute song.
or at the same time pick any. I've got XM. They got this channel called Yacht Rock, and it's all this like old 70s soft rock, and I love
Right.
that channel, man. I love it. Listen to it, man.
Right.
But so Kiss comes along, and the thing that was really cool about all that was, ever since '71, I guess, when Alice Cooper played Alexandria Roller Rink, and I saw that tour book, I immediately started gobbling up all their records.
Hmm.
And, where I was living, it was in a very rural area. There were only a few houses there, and a lot of farms, and a lot of woods, and a lot of cross-country motorcycle riding, and a lot of hiking, that kind of stuff. Breakfast, making breakfast out in the woods and that kind of stuff. And but in that few couple houses that were there in that spot, there was one guy that lived in this house who was around our same age, who was digging all the same stuff. So I had like a buddy, that like digged rock, and we would explore these sounds together. His name was Joey, and we went together to see Alice Cooper on the winter tour of the $1 Billion Babies leg in late '73. So that was right towards the tail end of the first group, because their last show was in April of '74. So we caught one of their last shows, and I remember too.
When they were a band before it just became Alice Cooper the person, it was Alice Cooper the band.
Yeah, with Glenn Buxton, the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, the whole stage with the mannequins and they had. It was funny
Alex
'cause,
was really, really pushing that side of it as well. The whole theatrics and grand guignol, if you will, of just all that stuff.
well, yeah, the experience was incredible, but you got to keep in mind at the time I'm 11 years old.
Wow.
Okay, and we had floor seats, and they were pretty good. We were probably about 15, 20 rows back. if I stood on my chair and like on my tippy toes, I could see the band, and it was right dead center too. It was a good thing. But unfortunately, the guy next to me was just like chain smoking joints. The guy ripped through a fucking ounce of weed that night. Oh, can I say that word? We're on the internet. I
Yeah,
have
it's all good, man.
well, good to know.
Go.
Write that down in the pocket. There you go. Uh, yeah. So, and I remember this dude, man. I remember this shit. He's sitting there, he's smoking, and he's doing this, and his hands that were covered in resin, like weed resin on his fucking hands, But the stench from that the whole time was probably my first contact bus, whether I wanted it or not, But I remember standing on this chair. It's like after a while, man, I got to sit down, man, and I just groove out on the music, But the band
Right.
was great. It was and it was such, if you ever talk about, piercing the bubble when they broke up, it was like, wow, what am
Mm,
I going to do now? That was like it was like I escaped into those records. I
mm,
literally, Halo of Flies, I just listened to it the other day and I go on a trip every time I hear that song. The lyrics, the arrangements, the recording, just everything. It's so perfect. And they broke up, and it's like, where am I going to go? And here comes Iggy, here comes
mm.
Kiss,
To
you
fill the
know,
void.
and that was that bridge that
Mm,
kept me going. And then and I was getting into Lou Reed too, and
mm.
it was right around the time Rock and Roll Animal came out, and
Mm. That's a great record.
I played that Sweet Jane track to learn it on guitar because I wanted to learn how do you play this. I was playing guitar at that time, all those songs. I played Stairway to Heaven. This is before I picked up the drums. House of the Rising Sun was the first song I ever learned. I could arpeggiate Stairway to Heaven in early 72. And so when Lou Reed comes out, the song Sweet Jane, just the way it sounded, just the whole performance it was perfect. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it was Mick Mashbeer and was that Dave Wagner or who was the other guitar player? Mick
It
and
is Steve Hunter and Dick Wagner, right?
Steve Hunter. Correct, thank you. Um, but anyways, so I learned the chords. I can't do all the lead stuff, of course, but I listened to that record, so I was really getting immersed in that early mid 70s New York grungy,
Mm.
really the music meant something.
Mm.
It wasn't fixed. It was real, you know. And so that just, that's what I was into until 77 when I was upstairs, still with mom and dad. My two brothers, they're very involved in bands and they always had bands coming over and rehearsing over there. And um, funny funny thing was I forget whose band it was, what band it was, or whatever. But there was this guy came over. He was a drummer, and I didn't know him, but he had this like he looked like if you could picture David Lee Roth, picture that look. He, kind of longish hair, fuchsia pink jumpsuit. It's going to band practice at my parents' house, you know. And I'm upstairs milling around the house because I live there. And I walk through the hallway, and here comes this guy out of my mom and dad's bathroom with a chick. And it's like, okay, whatever. It turns out this is Willow Meadows, which is Punky Meadows' brother from Angel.
Mm.
you know. So having just that experience injected into this like 13-year-old's brain does
Yeah,
things, you
rock and
know.
roll. It was rock and roll.
George, my brother Mike was going to Gaithersburg High School, and he was a bass player, and somehow he met up with a guitar player, and this guy would come over every once in a while. Not every once in a while. He came over a lot because they used to practice there. He played a clear Dan Electra, which is like the coolest guitar. The clear ones where you can slide the pickup in and out.
Mm.
His name was Ivan, and he was a good guy. I mean, he was a really cool dude, really mellow, and we hit it off, good friends at that time. And they graduated at the same time in '74. And right after graduation, my brother and his friend Ivan went to England to see what's going on, I guess, and tool around, try to play some music, do whatever. And that's right when that punk scene was in its most nascent
It
stage. It
was
was like,
starting to percolate.
wasn't even. It was still pub rock. It was
Yeah.
still pub there. And Ivan hooked up with the Buttercups. Build me up, Buttercup, baby, don't you let me down. That song. And so the Foundations. So he was touring around with them. Eventually, they come back to the States. Mike, my brother, came back to D.C., although Ivan went to New York. Ivan hung around. He changed his name to Julian and joined the Voidoids. It was Ivan from the
Yeah.
Richard the Voidoids. So every time I see him, it's like looking at an old friend. you know, he might remember me if I reached out, and it was just these little things that hit me at that very young age really set me on a really clear path of where I wanted to go musically, because I was never one to want to make it just for the sake of making it.
Mhm.
Quote
Yeah,
Sid.
yeah,
I'll
this
quote Sid Vicious, who quoted Frank Sinatra. I'll do it my way.
yeah, do it your way. That's right. Well, I mean, it sounds like there was a lot of fate involved. I mean, and you said your brothers, I guess they're a few years older than you, and they were kind of influencing you, and they were kind of on that same kind of path. And music at this time, that music in particular, I mean, obviously a lot of those other bands, Zeppelin and Purple and Floyd and all those bands were still around, but at the same time, there were like these other bands that were just pushing the limits of everything. They were anti-establishment, and they were kind of anarchic, kind of early, early punk, if you will, just
You go
just
back
doing
to that same almost year, and what was Lou Reed doing? Metal Machine music.
yeah.
You know, that says it right there.
It's supposedly the biggest fu, the biggest fuck you to like the record label. I mean, there's different stories to why he did that, but one of them was he had some sort of like contract that he had to fulfill. And so he was just like, I'm gonna give them bullshit. And how punk rock is that?
Genius.
Yeah.
And he got paid, you know?
You got paid. So back then, so like when you where was that Alice Cooper show? Was that at the Cap Center or
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Joey's mom drove us in her station wagon, had the wood side paneling on the
Sure.
station wagon. You can imagine rolling into, and this is '70s in the Capitol Center. And you talk about like, the commanders and tailgate parties. There's some tailgate parties going on there, bro.
Yeah.
In the '70s in Capitol Center.
Sure. Did you so what do you remember who opened up for them? For the band?
Ah, absolutely. Alice Cooper, a five-piece group. Um, very capable musicians. They did everything basically on their own up until this tour. And I guess it was like probably record company pressure or whatever. They brought in, Mick Mashbeer and Steve Hunter, and Rick Derringer did a ton of studio work on their records.
Hmm.
Rick Derringer, if you understand Rick Derringer's style and you listen to Love It to Death and Killer, you could pick out certain lead parts, lead segments. That doesn't sound like Glenn Buxton, because Glenn Buxton is like, he's like out of this world kind of shit. Rick Derringer's he's a technocrat almost. He really knows
More
scales.
strength.
Yeah. So speaking of the band that opened, Alice Cooper comes out the $1 Billion Babies tour. There's the 5 guys plus the 2 others, so there's at least 7 on the stage to make it sound good, which it did. It was an incredible show. Check out Glad to See You Again. It's that tour. And the opener was a little old band from Texas
ZZ
called.
Top.
I was waiting, man. There's a little latency there, but yes, there's only one, and this is '73, and their beards were only this long.
They had just started growing them.
They were there. They had the big 10-gallon hats and the rhinestones, but it was just 3 guys. And I remember those guys put out so much fucking sound. For 3 guys, they were so tight and everything was just spot on. It just filled the room. Sonically, the way Dusty and Billy had their instruments tuned and everything, they complemented each other perfectly. There were no, except for the Capitol Center itself, which is like the worst acoustics you've ever can imagine.
Oh yeah, I remember.
But yeah, that was the one thing that really stood out for me about that entire night was that, well, 3 guys gave 7 guys a run for their money.
Right. And now, so that was probably the Trey Hombres tour then.
Yeah, yeah, LaGrange was huge. Yeah,
So yeah, that's so. Did you kind of already know who they were then when you went to go see them?
not really. Not
Wow.
really. Now I go there expecting Alice Cooper, which is, what Alice is. What Alice is all
But yeah,
about.
I was gonna the music was very
Yeah.
like very different from each other.
But when Jimi Hendrix declares Billy Gibbons as the best guitar player he ever heard, then that says something.
Yeah, it's quite an endorsement.
Yeah.
So early on, so you were started playing the guitar. So at what point did you well, your brothers, so how did you basically came from a musical family and there was music always around, and so you were just you were influenced by your brothers on their path that they were on. So how did you start playing drums, and around what time was that?
That's a good question, because there wasn't really a lot of it wasn't a really musical family. My dad's military and my mom was a stay-at-home, homemaker.
Mhm.
Um, so as far as, bringing that kind of culture into the house, it wasn't really a lot of emphasis on that. Um, But one thing, at a very early Christmas, I mean, this is back in the '60s, um, it would have had to have been before '68. Mom and Dad decided, well, let's get the boys some guitars. So they bought my two older brothers, Mike and Steve, like legitimate acoustic wood guitars. And they bought me, who's like 4 years younger.
Mm,
I'm still there's a major age difference between me and my two older brothers.
mm.
So I was always like much younger. It was like, and so they bought me the little plastic guitar that you wind up and you crank it and it
Right.
plays by itself. And it makes me go, woo, you know. So that was kind of the first introduction to the six-string instrument. And Mike and Steve pursued it, and Steve became quite good at it. He really became a rather accomplished lead guitar player, and he was into a lot of alternative music, at the same time. And Mike, he started on the guitar, but he kind of like moved over towards bass. And
Mm.
but the thing is with the plastic guitar is you have to keep in mind is before that, and we're talking about my earliest ever memories, which is what, three, two, how old were you when you could remember your first memories? Like it's a long time ago. I would take pencils. Well, my parents. Well, let me back that up a little bit. The musical influence of my family on us was reduced really for me to three records. The first one being Puff the Magic Dragon.
Classic.
That song was a trip for me. That was an escape. That was probably the first time that I understood that, wow, you can go to other places
Hmm.
by music. And the other two records were Beatles 65 and
Mm.
Rubber Soul,
Wow.
the North American versions, not the legit versions, but the greedy North American record companies that wanted to put every single track on it so they could pump more money out of it, even though, whatever. Um, but
Oh yeah,
still,
the
that time I
Parlophone
had,
in Columbia.
what's that?
There was the Parlophone and then the Columbia versions, right?
Right. You're
Yeah.
probably a lot more versed on that. But the Beatles songs hit me. Um, Having been a massive Beatles freak for my entire life, still to this day, I appreciate those songs even more now.
Mm.
Um, but at that time, for me, what it was just really beautiful music. It was well done. It was really accessible. Um, it had a good groove, had rhythms, the beats, all that. And for whatever reason, and I'll never know to this day, I would pick up pencils and flip them around for the eraser ends because the erasers bounce better. If you bounce a pencil eraser, it bounces really nice. And I realized for some reason I gravitated towards Ringo, I guess. Maybe
Uh-huh.
it was the beat. It was just that time.
Mhm.
His time is like no other, except for maybe Charlie Watts. Except for maybe Charlie Watts. Ginger's good, but Ginger can. Well, they all speed up and slow down. But Ringo, for some reason, that's where even though I listened to all the melodies and all the structure and all that, the beat is what I kind of was making me move. Because I was a hyperactive kid. I like to jump around, and the beat made me jump around, and I just started like tapping on things, and I realized somehow maybe it was uh, fate, whatever, that pencils bounce really nice. And then I also learned that if you set up books, like hardcover books, around in an arrangement with different thicknesses of the books, they'll make different sounds. So I can hit the pencil here, it'll make a different sound every time I go around. Just kind of teaching me going around like that, And the whole time listening to the Ringo and gotta be like Ringo. So I'm literally curling my lip because Ringo would curl his lip when he played. Because
Right.
Elvis curled his lip. It gives
Mhm.
you that street look. I remember, it's like this is like a 4-year-old, whatever. So that banging on things never left me, and I'm always tapping on things, even to this day, working out trying to. I'll never understand the 40 rudiments. Forget it. Charting, I can't read. They're just a bunch of dots on a page. But when I hear it, once I process it, I know exactly what to do. And so I'd be tapping around with these things, and eventually I progress to other things like Utz potato chips. The potato chips, back in the day when packaging was packaging, you see now everything's getting really cheap on packaging, but you can get these big bins of Utz potato chips. They're like this big,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and there's a plastic bag inside, but the bin
Mhm.
itself is cardboard, and it has a lid. You put the lid back on it. It's for big. That's more like a bass drum or floor tom. It's a lower pitch. Boom, boom, boom. So it's like, okay, that's a cool one. Boom, boom, boom. With the book, and then I learned take a lid off a pot or a pan and ding it. It'll go ding like a cymbal. So dum dum ding, dum dum ding. And so eventually, um, piecing all this together without even knowing what I'm doing. And I would use uh, these old coat hangers that are made for hanging pants on. And they have this cardboard tube on the bottom, so it's round. And I would pop the cardboard tube off, and those would be sticks because they're
Mm.
long, more like drumsticks. The only thing is they didn't last. Once you whack them, they snap. So you got to, but that was kind of the whole thing. And then
Well,
from
yeah.
there, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, the thing about the Beatles is like they were very magical, and they, when they came out, the music really took you to a different place. And as a young kid, I mean, how many how many bands did they influence? I mean, including you. I mean, like, an entire generation of kids to play music.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Moonlight was transcendental. Just their
Is that
arrangement.
Rubber Soul?
Uh, you know, which album that is. That's where my limitations of Beatleology. There's the Beatles Bible is great. Go to the Beatles Bible is great. But as far as what song was on what record, it was so
Mhm.
butchered. It was so, I call it sausage.
That's
Like
your
it,
song note, though, Mr.
yeah,
Moonlight.
it was sausage. Just like a lot of the Black Market Baby stuff, it was sausage. We'll get to that later.
I'm,
But
Right.
I'm curious to ask you, Tommy, because essentially being a Beatles fan almost from the get go, uh, it's almost like there's before the Beatles and after the Beatles. It's sort of like Christ. We measure the time the years before Christ and after Christ, and it's just kind of the same with rock. Obviously, they were amazing songwriters, but what else? What aspects of their music do you think was unique for the time?
It just sounded good, and I had no other point of reference really, except for AM radio. Um, the Beach Boys, Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Mm,
Every time I hear that song, it's like instant recall. I'm
mm,
going down University Boulevard, driving towards the campus before they put that Marriott hotel, and they got that one building with the big spire on the top, and the Riggs building, and they were building a Red Barn restaurant, which is now a laundromat. That whole thing, I just picture that when I hear that song. That pops into my head. And ironically, that location, I could walk there in probably about 10 minutes. I literally live Lewisdale. I went to Lewisdale Elementary, is literally right there. So these are songs like in the house itself. It was like Beatles and Puff.
Beatles and
Uh,
Paul.
but that wasn't my only exposure to music. The AM radio, all the stuff that was on the AM radio, everyone knows it's windy, dun 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 dun, all those songs. Spanking Our Gang, there's Cliff Richard, there's a ton of them, and so those things were all kind of hit me at that time, and just sort of nurturing this kind of like almost like a
You
it's
were
like
like a sponge. It became part of your DNA, essentially.
yeah, yeah. I knew what I liked, and I didn't like what I didn't like, and I just stuck with things I liked, and it put me on this path going from like Puff the Magic Dragon to Black Manta, you know, or which is pretty extreme,
Right.
So um, the I guess the thing that spoke to me most about the Beatles and those songs at the time was it was it was an escapism for me. It was I had some things in my personal life that I was dealing with that were rather difficult, and so that was a real good avenue, in a positive way, because that's the way, anytime you run into adversity, you need to find, you know, methods to release yourself from that without destroying yourself in the process. And I was fortunate enough at that time where, you know, just young and dumb, I guess. I didn't know any better. I was just the music was working. That was my drug. It was
Mm, sure.
it's we go through the 60s and I'm already really into songs, not just beats or rhythms, but songs and like arrangements, how they sound, how they beginning, the middle, the end, how they're all, the whole journey that you go through listening to a piece of music. And in 1969, for my birthday, my parents, unbeknownst to them, bought me a record. And the only reason they bought it was because it had my name on it. It was called Tommy. Okay. And I got that record, and you talk about the Raw Power cover, like a what is that? What is that? That studio trick that Steven Spielberg uses, where he just all of a sudden he'll block everything else out and he'll zoom in on the main. It was like I just went straight in it on that album cover. I was like, wow, I could get lost in this for a very long time. And then you open up the gatefold back in the days when you had gatefolds, when record companies actually cared about the bands, and the whole thing. And then I put the record on, and it was like composition like I never knew before.
Hmm.
This is before I had discovered Bob Dylan. Okay, because you got to put Bob's in the mix. I just wasn't aware of him at the time. But Pete Townsend, the way he put some of those songs together, I put those things on. Like when Pure and Easy, that was after that a little bit. It was probably an outtake, but it was all developed right around the same time. There's songs on there that actually they make me start crying still. I mean, they just hit me so deep. I love that record so much. And what it did is it gave me an appreciation for songs, not just attitude and image and, product and everything. It's the meat on the bone. And I learned later in reading interviews that, Pete Townsend described it as not, is it a concept record or is it this or that or whatever? And he goes, no, it was just a string of vignettes together. We just strung a bunch of vignettes together, and we figured out a way to segue one from the one to the next. And the way they did it was just pure genius. And so that gave me a real sense of songwriting, song structure with the Beatles songwriting, song structure. So I had a real interest in that, not just banging on the drums and playing a beat. I was really into melody. When I was in the second grade, I can't remember what song it was. We had there were 7 classes, and we had the 5. It was like, math, science, history, probably social studies, whatever. There was another one, whatever. And then you had 2 electives. In the electives, I always chose art and music. Those are the 2 things all through elementary school. How to make things and how to get a better understanding of music. And one of the I guess study groups, and this is in second grade. This is like 1968 or 69. One of the study groups was we were going to sing along with a record to see how the class sings with the record. And I forget what song it was, but I recognize the song, and the song comes along, and I guess comes through the chorus, and I decided to take the harmony. I'm not singing with the group. I'm doing a third or a fifth. I didn't know it was a third or a fifth, but I'm doing that. And my teacher kept saying, there's somebody in the room that's not singing with the rest of the group. And can we try to get that together and everything? And just like, so already I'm exploring how to push it out, develop sound and take one note and make it into a lot of notes by adding certain things or subtracting things. That's the where the real value is in composition is knowing when to pull notes out, when to make silence, when to leave space. And Ron Carter from the second great quintet from Miles Davis has a really good approach on that. But so I already had that kind of kicking around, and so fast forward back again to Kiss. Kiss got me. I had to wean myself from Alice Cooper. Got to Kiss, Iggy, all that stuff was great. Whatever I was listening
Wait,
to.
I want to ask you real quick. So your parents seem to be pretty open-minded. So because these are some pretty wild album covers, the Alice Cooper and the Stooges and the Kiss. So when you pointed at the Raw Power, was your mom she was just like, oh, okay, I'll get that for you? Or, I mean, was she just very, very cool like that?
Yeah,
Or
that's where that
was she freaked out at all?
was what?
Was your mom freaked out at all?
My mom.
Yeah.
My dad was. My dad's military. He wanted me to
Right.
join. He wanted me to he wanted me to enlist. At a high school, and it's like, no, I joined a punk band. So
But Raw
this
Power, when you're
is this
she
is
was
in the
just,
'70s, and I'm starting to grow my hair long and
hmm.
everything, and like, my dad's like pushing for haircuts, and my mom's like, yeah, let him go. And that's one thing I love about my mother is she was always very supportive, and she would drive me down to Venomans to buy sticks and heads, and anytime I needed anything, she was always there. So, the I just continued to just do my thing, and I just followed wherever the voice was calling me to. That's where I went. And this is around
Well, she wasn't like, hey, Tommy, this Kiss record, you sure you want this Kiss record? And but she would just buy it for you. Because when you see
uh,
it, it's pretty shocking.
well, see, well, okay. Let me go off on a little bit of tangent. I could take that same point and elaborate a little bit. I had that same experience, but with a different person and a different record. Okay, we have to back up a little bit because when I was in sixth grade, Laytonsville Elementary, this was in early '73, and $1 Billion Babies had come out, and I was already a Kiss freak. Had to get it. Okay, I used to have the panties from Schools Out. I used to have those. I wish I still had them. But I think they disintegrate after a while. But so $1 Billion Babies. One thing in sixth grade, it was a rain day. I remember this. Going to school was a rain day, and I knew we would be indoors for recess. So usually recess was, the kids play, the kids do whatever they do. They do this and that and the other. And so I bought my $1 Billion Babies record with me to school. Okay. And I'm thinking maybe I can get to play this in school. So recess comes around, and I went to the teacher, and her name was Mrs. Abert. I said, Mrs. Abert, would it be okay if I put this record on? And I handed her the record, and she's looking at the cover of $1 Billion Babies, and then she opens it up, and then she sees the gatefold with the picture of the band and the piles of cash with Alice, like delivering the baby like that. And she's like, she was eating her lunch, it was probably a yogurt or something with a spoon, and she's licking the fucking back of her fucking spoon, telling me, "You waste your money on this?" I said, "Well, I like it. Can I play it?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I got to play it. I think the room dug it. Kids are pretty open-minded. Anything to break up the monotony. But that was the first time that I actually brought like, my musical experience into the academic world, and I developed it from there, going into junior high and high school.
Right.
So, um, but as far as like the supportive thing, yeah, it was a real mixed bag because my dad was totally against it. It drove a wedge between my parents, and my mom was like, she's the libertarian that she is. She just let them do her thing, let them find their way, and which I appreciate because without that, uh, well, it's that's let me take that back. Maybe if I didn't listen to her and I listened to Dad, I would have ended up in the military, and I would have gotten some like whatever you get when you get out of there, and then you get some clout, get some VA benefits, and you probably get lined up for some good work, and I probably make some good money right now. you know, rather than being the starving artist, and
Math, man.
rather than being the starving artist that I'm still today. But I love what I do. you know.
Right
So
on.
so yeah, it was some strife there, but regardless, I continued and developed. And my older brothers, they were developing their shit too. They were getting into like full-fledged bands, and this is in the '70s. We had we had moved in '73, so we had a different house, which had a basement and had a pretty good sized backyard. With Behind that was nothing. Behind that was Rock Creek Park.
Hmm.
We had very little neighbors. And my brothers got this ingenious idea. Well, let's build a stage in the backyard. Okay. So
Wow.
they would do that in the backyard. And then, this is the '70s when pyrotechnics were huge. And this is the '70s when you could still go to your local gun and ammo store and get a big can of black powder and just walk in there, buy it, walk out, you know. And we figured out a way to take coffee cans, draw out the bottoms, put two posts with two connect conduct wires through. We were into Estes model rockets, where you could fire the rockets off, Estes, and you could take those and use that controller to trigger the posts. And we'd take an Estes model rocket fuse and put it between the posts, and then pour a bunch of black powder on top of it. And you hit that switch. The biggest cloud, huge flash, the biggest cloud of the bluest, thickest smoke that just hung there. It was badass. And we'd set up cans, rows of three on each side. So we had three on each side. Boom, boom, boom. you know? And so we were into that pyrotechnic stuff. And
Awesome.
it was right around that same time. I wasn't on the traps yet. At that time, I had graduated from. I went from books to potato chip cans with pot lids, and then I moved to couches. And this is when I started getting into Queen and all this,
Mm.
because I figured a couch, if you sit facing a couch, the right way on the if you're in like house right, the ottoman is on the left, not the ottoman, the armrest is on the left. There's a cushion here, there's a cushion here, there's a cushion here, there's a cushion here. That's basically set up like a drum set. Boom, 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 boom. The only problem is the kick. You got to just kick the couch with your foot. So I got used to going around drums, doing hand combinations on different things. You know, it's all just rights and lefts in a series of, and what combination, that's all it is. And so that got me really comfortable playing like that. And there was one, I don't know if it was like a summer vacation or a Christmas vacation, where my cousins came down from Yonkers, New York, because we'd visit. We go up there, they'd come down here, and they came down, and my bands had they had all their gear in the basement, full set of drums. It was like, Tommy, don't touch the drums. You know, I just sit there and look at them, you know, and so, you know, however it happened, I was either asked or I wanted to, or I something like that, wanted to play this song on the drums for my family, because they had come down. My aunt and my cousins were there. And it was, I can't remember the exact track, but it was off the Jay Giles band, Ladies in Waiting. It was that year. That record just came out. And Stephen Joe Blad would do this really cool stuff on the hi-hats, which I really liked his style. So they had it set up so they had a turntable set up through the PA, so you could play the PA real loud, and then I could play along with it. And I remember the song came on, and it was like, here I go. I just played it the first time I ever played it. This is really the first time I ever played the drums, but I knew the song, and I had all the hand-foot coordination down. It was just a matter of applying it. The first time I ever played the song's playing, I'm playing along to it, keeping with it. I'm in the groove, playing along, get to the beginning, middle, end, done. And it's like, wow, yay, man, that was fantastic. God, man, how'd you do that? My brother comes down here. He comes in here. He goes, hey, man, I thought I told you to stay off the drums, man. You've been down here playing them the whole time, you know? And it's like, no, man, that was the first time I ever played. So, you know, I guess it was just, you know, a natural thing from when I was like 3 years old, banging on books, picking up Ringo's times. Ringo's times signature was imprinted in my brain. His time signature has been imprinted in my brain. That's my natural time.
A part of your DNA now.
Yeah. And which is fortunate. I'm blessed for that, because like these days, drummers that just, you know, just up and coming drummers, they're all learning to click tracks and computers and stuff. So they're playing like metronomes. They're playing very linear. They're up and down, up and down. I was playing really circular because, you know, Ringo came out, all those bands came out of the jazz era. So, you know, that natural, you know, ability was just, I was fortunate to, it wasn't that I recognized it, but I just, I grasped, I went towards it and embraced it at a really young age. And it may, I don't think I have it here. It also has something to do with like Christmas time, with like us getting the guitars and all that. And one thing we had this record called The Little Drummer Boy. It was a choral group. Beautiful sounds. If you're into
That's
choral
one of my
music,
favorite songs of all time.
yeah. Well, Little Drummer Boy was like one of the big albums for Christmas for me at that time, and that thing was always out there. And and I'm just looking at that, and I'm listening to Ringo. I'm looking at Little Drummer Boy, Ringo, Little Drummer Boy, and I'm in the middle, you know.
Right.
So, um, it was just a natural development. It wasn't something that I just conscientiously decided, well, I'm going to play the drums, because I was actually a guitar player first.
Right.
And so
You-
that got me through the 70s, and the rock and roll animal thing was huge. And like 75.
that's a perfect time for, this could be like this is going to be the first episode in an ongoing, you know, series of episodes, just kind of chronicling everything that you've experienced. I think this is the perfect time to stop it right here, to pause it right here, and then, you know, we can move on. We can do this like every few months or something like that. Because I have a million more questions for you, man. I have so much more time to cover. We didn't even really get a chance to talk about this. We'll bring this up next time. But yeah, we have all kinds of, this will basically be the Tommy Carr show. It'll, like, like I said, it'll be the raw power of the DC underground music scene through the eyes of Tommy Carr. And this will be the first episode.
Yeah, well,
Did you?
that's a nice neat little bow that you put on it there, because metal extreme music is exactly that. It's extreme. I mean, where do you go from there?
Hmm.
There was a lot of uh, you know, there were a lot of things sort of percolating in the Lower East Side at that time, which became, which I think the metal. Let's back that up. The metal extreme music, that whole thing, it was sort of uh, a preparation or for what was yet to come, I guess. As far as like musical direction and attitude, because you have to keep in mind this is all at the same time. Disco was just like,
Exactly.
I am like the syndrome was the most annoying thing ever developed. And it was all over the place. I hated that thing. And it just made me, you know, dig, these, I guess you call them alternative sounds more. We're talking about bringing music to school. I used to walk around with a boombox in junior high and high school. But we could pick that up later.
Yeah. That's one of my questions, man. It's on there. We're gonna cover the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, did you have any questions? Any last minute questions, Steve?
Yeah.
No.
Hmm.
No, it seems like a good segue to the next chat.
You got any last minute thoughts there, Tommy?
Well, it's I think it's really like cool just to like sort of, chronologically go through this stuff, and it's it keeps me focused on what's important, because I'm still doing it to this day. And there have been times where there was like I was like dead in the water. I mean, I'm the fucking Marie Celeste, just like getting
Hmm.
blown around in the Atlantic somewhere. It's like, where am I going now?
Hmm.
And there it's a desperation thing, because when there's a real void when that occurs. So, having music in my life, it really buoys me. It really, because life's tough. It always has been, and it doesn't get any easier. And you got to have something that you can look
Music
forward
is
to.
magic, man. Music is magic. Music is power.
It is. Well, it's universal too. I mean,
Mm.
um, there was a guy that I met uh, last year, and we have nothing in common, and but we met through music. We have a mutual admiration or love for playing and performing. So it's always good to meet people like that, even if you don't agree with somebody on everything, or for me personally, I don't even have to necessarily like somebody too much to work with them. If I feel that there's a greater good, I always play to the song. I want to play to the song. I want to play to the band. And if I'm not going to let some little personal thing interfere with that, and I'm guilty for letting that sort of override the situation. And but it's lessons learned, and things always work out for the better. I got a good gig, and looking forward to playing more, and looking forward to continuing this, because it's like you said, we've only kind of scratched the surface.
This is only episode one, man, in the odyssey of your life. So,
Yeah.
well,
Well, I really appreciate that you're not like just B&B centric, because this interview probably would have already been over.
no, man, no. We're gonna talk about the whole from beginning to end. This is
Yeah,
your life, Tommy Carr.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, I just have one final thing to say, and that's remember, look to the stars, carry that torch of enlightenment, and strive to be a disciple of rock and roll in the Brotherhood of Orpheus. Peace.
Awesome. And I'll raise my stick for you.